y'all, and welcome back to the Unleash You podcast, the number one podcast for growing in all things faith and self-development to promote healing, growth, and transformation. And I want to start out by wishing you guys a happy new year. We have stepped over into 2023, and this is the year of what I like to call the year of getting out of God's way, ultimately getting out of my own way so that I can manifest God's highest will and purpose for my life, and that I can go ahead and look back and help you guys do the same. And so welcome to the second episode of the Unleash You podcast. If you have not, make sure you go ahead back and check out the last week's message titled Getting Out of God's Way. That was the launch into the new thing that God is doing here, walking on water, doing what we do. And so make sure if you have not, you check it out. And so for this episode, what I want to talk to you guys about, since we are stepping into a brand new year, I want to talk to you guys about stepping into this year with strategy, because we have made some bold declarations over ourselves, over our year, what it's going to look like and what we want to see from God. And so we have to know that we're going to need strategy in this season, because change doesn't just happen. Change is intentional, and change oftentimes brings about resistance and opposition. And so we're going to need some strategy on how to navigate the new thing and how we're going to actually really show up in this season for ourselves in a different light. Because you know how many times on New Year's we set all of these goals and then we fall back into the same patterns and habits within the next month or a couple of months. And that's because with change, there is resistance and there's opposition. There are things that are trying to pull you back into who you used to be and keep you stuck in a pattern. And honestly, y'all, I don't want to go through this mountain another year. I don't want to doubt the greatness that is on the inside of me for another year. I do not want to continue to cycle around the mountain of, well, maybe next year I might have what it takes. No, I want to fully show up, and I want to give myself at least a chance to fail if I'm going to fail, because every failure comes with a lesson. So I'm not afraid of that, but I am afraid of never at least trying, right? And so to start off this episode, we are going to be talking about how we are stepping into 2023 with some strategy. And so I'm going to go ahead and just be vulnerable with you guys. God is doing a new thing. If you look at Isaiah 43, verse 18 through 19, it says, "Forget the former things. Don't dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing." God is honestly doing a new thing in this season, and it is requiring us to release a lot of baggage from our past. It's requiring us to release a lot of the limitations that have held us bound and stuck in a lesser version of who we are. It's actually questioning our own identity and actually asking ourselves the hard questions. Who do I want to be in this year? How do I want to show up in this world? What am I actually trying to manifest? And so we're getting alone with ourselves. We're getting honest with ourselves about the things that are even holding us back from showing up and being the best versions of ourselves. And getting out of God's way is truly taking responsibility for our own life, but taking responsibility for our life. It's, like I said, it's intentional. And so in this season of walking into the new thing that God is doing with me and with my ministry, there is a lot of resistance. There is so much opposition. You don't even understand. To make this episode right now, I have fought with this episode for a couple of days now, really trying to get out the word that God deposited down on the inside of me, literally fighting to make it happen. And then I was going to settle and just post something that I really wasn't all the way proud of. And I said, no, I refuse to settle all 2023. I want to produce, and I want to be the best version of me. I want to show up in a way that makes me feel proud of who I am, that makes me feel proud of the things that God are doing in my life. And so it was a lot of oppositions, and I realized that it was a very strategic, because we understand that we have an enemy, and the enemy is real. The enemy, he knows exactly what's inside of you, even if you haven't necessarily realized what's on the inside of you just yet, because he understands that if he can continue to throw resistance and opposition, and then you give up and you quit or you delay your process another year, he knows that you are ultimately going to keep going around the same mountains. And that's what he wants for you. He doesn't want you to get the revelation about who you are. He doesn't want you to have the revelation about the power and the authority that you actually have, because if you ever got a revelation about the glory that's down on the inside of you, if you ever got a revelation about just how powerful you are and just how much the world needs your voice, it needs your talents, it needs your gifts, then you are going to wreak havoc to the kingdom of darkness. And Satan does not want that. But this is why I said we need to step into 2023 with strategy. Creating this podcast and me really dedicating myself to the new thing that God is doing, which is really me, if I can be completely vulnerable, is seeing myself in a new light. I have had a distorted perception of who I am for so long, never feeling good enough, never feeling like I have what it takes to actually manifest the life that I see in my own head. And when I sit down with God and he shows me all of the things that he wants to do with me, sometimes I feel unqualified. And so the resistance around even creating this podcast, the resistance around actually showing up for myself in a way that honors the season that I'm in, there has been a lot of resistance. And I realized the resistance was trying to get me to forfeit this season of my life. It was trying to keep me stuck, bound into that old, it's like a sad rehearsal story. I'm not going to lie. Oh, pity, pity, pity. I don't know. I don't think I can do it. I don't think I'm good enough. I'm not qualified. Who's going to want to listen to what I have to say anyway? My words, I can't articulate myself well enough. And all of these lies are springing forth from the resistance that I'm feeling. And if I'm not careful and if I don't have strategy, then I might give into what the enemy is trying to plant into my mind. You have to understand that there is a battle and a war for your mind, because as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And the enemy doesn't want you to think the right thoughts, because if you think the right thoughts, then you're going to align your actions to exactly what is needed in order for you to cultivate and nurture the person, the man or the woman that you're becoming. And so yeah, I don't want to be bound no more. I don't want to feel that. And so a large part of us unleashing our highest potential in this season is really us pushing through the resistance and opposition. For the year of 2023 to be our best year yet, it's not the absence of problems. I do not want nobody to think that just because this is going to be your best year yet, spiritually, financially, mentally, physically, whatever the case may be, that it's going to be peaches and cream. Like, it's not going to be. No, this is going to be a battle, because in order for you to become somebody you've never been, in order for you to manifest something you've never had, you literally have to do something you've never done. And that's what's the hard part. Because we are creatures of habit. We are creatures of familiarity. We are set and bound by our own patterns, habits, thought processes, and it really requires us to renew our mind. It literally requires, like how God said in Isaiah, to forget the former things, to forget who we used to be, to forget what we thought we knew, and to actually show up in a way where we're questioning everything. We're not settling, right? And so I just realized in this life in general, you got to know how to fight. This life comes with so many testings, so many trials, so many tribulations. Like, life is going to life regardless. And if you don't know how to fight, if you don't know how to turn to the word of God and use it as your sword in this hour, the enemy is going to trample all over you, because you have to understand that he is so strategic. He has been doing this since Adam and Eve. And there is nothing new under the sun. Anything that you think is new, it's not new. The enemy already knows, and he knows you very well. He knows the things that are going to tempt you. And that's why the Bible even tells us that we are carried away by our own lustful desires. He's not going to tempt you with anything that you don't have an appetite for, or anything that doesn't make you go, that does look pretty appetizing, right? We don't really even know in the Garden of Eden if it was really an apple or if it's just a metaphor, but he knew what it was going to take to get them to fall and bite the apple. So we have to understand that the enemy is going to be dangling things, shiny things, things that used to fulfill us in our past life, things that used to keep us bound in our past life. All of those things are going to be tested in this hour, and we have to know how to fight through the resistance. And so, like I said, a large part of stepping into 2023 is stepping into it with strategy, knowing how to fight, knowing who our opponent is, because we wrestle not against flesh and blood. You have to understand, you have to open up your spiritual senses. You have to open up your spiritual eyesight, your spiritual ears, to be able to discern the things of the spirit, because we are not wrestling against flesh and blood. This is a spiritual battle, and you got to know how to fight spiritually. And all that you need is within you. I know that sounds so cliche, because you're like, oh, it's within me, then why hasn't it already been brought out? Because it's not even about you. It's so much deeper than you. It's so much deeper than you. The Holy Spirit who dwells within you, who lives within you, is the one who came to guide and lead you. But so many times we search for God in external factors and means. We look for God in the latest trends. We look for God in the latest podcast or the YouTube, the sermon, the motivational quote. And I'm not saying you can't find God there. There have been many times where God has spoke to me oftentimes where God speaks to me through other people, but it's usually a direct confirmation of what the God in me has already been saying in my private time. And so strategy number one, what I want to give you for stepping into 2023 is turning to God. Knowing how to dwell in the secret place, because those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High, God says that your soul is going to find rest. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but you have strategy. You know who to turn to. Why not turn to the one who created both the heavens and the earth, the greatest architect there is, the one who can turn your business plan into just an idea, to the one who can empower you to actually walk out on faith and do the things that you're called to do, because you have to realize it's never been about your might. It's never been about what you can do on your own strength. This is a walk where we are supposed to be dependent upon God. And Mike Todd said it. If this is going to be your best year yet, it has to be your best year spiritually. No more can you rely on your own strength, because you're just going to continue to get the same results that you have been getting. God said that I am the true vine. This is Jesus talking, by the way. I am the true vine and you are the branch, and those who are connected to me bear much fruit. And so when I'm connected to God, and whenever this world starts lifing, because like I said, it's going life. There's going to be some trials. There's going to be some tears. There's going to be seasons for everything, mourning, disappointment, whatever the case may be. But I know who to turn to, because I am connected to the vine and I bear much fruit. And we understand the fruit of the Spirit is peace. I have a peace of mind. And so it doesn't matter what's going on around me. God says that when Jesus left this earth, he said, my peace I leave unto you. I have God's peace because I walk with God. I talk with God. I dwell in the shelters of the Most High. I have a place where I can be weak. So many people say, Krista, you're so strong. You're so this, you're so confident. And if I can be honest, I don't feel that way often. I really don't. So many times I question myself, but I do it in the shelter of the Most High. I pour out before God. That's my number one strategy. I know how to go to the Father, and I know how to be weak, because he said, when you are weak, then you are made strong. I know how to admit when I don't have it all together. I know how to admit when I've been broken and bruised and I need healing. I know how to admit when I'm confused and I don't know what else to do, and I'm surrendered to the moment. God, what do you have for me? Forget my ideas, forget my plan, forget what I want to see. God, what do you have for me? I know who to turn to. I know how to tap into the presence of God. I don't need nobody else to tell me what God is saying. I know how to hear from God myself. Because if you look at John 10:27, it says that my sheep know my voice and I know them. And another they will not follow. They follow after me. So you have to understand that you have the ability to hear from God yourself. You do not need nobody else to tell you what your purpose is. You do not need nobody else to tell you what you are supposed to do. Because if you are tapped in spiritually, if you know how to tap into God on a spiritual level, you can hear from God yourself. But it takes intentionality. Somebody said, Krista, well, how do you hear from God? Because I feed my spirit. You have to understand, we might live in a fleshly body, but we're still soul and spirit. And I know how to feed my soul and I know how to feed my spirit. And whichever one you feed in this hour is the one that's going to come more alive. And so I'm intentional in this hour to make sure that I am protecting my eyes and ear gates, that I am making sure that I'm not just allowing anything into my space that might taint the vision that God is doing. Because if I know the enemy is after me, I know how the enemy fights me. He fights me in my mind. He wants me to have a distorted perception of self like I've had for so many years. He wants me to doubt who I am on the inside. He wants me to question myself. He wants me to forfeit everything that's within me by just having a wrong idea and perception of who I am. And that's why in this hour, you need to safeguard. You need to safeguard yourself. You need to safeguard what you're allowing into your space, what you're listening to, what you're watching. Whatever you feed is coming alive. And so in this hour, spending time with God should be your number one priority. We're always trying to figure out, well, what's the next strategy? How do I do this? And we're looking on social media to see how this person's doing it, how this person's showing up. And it's like what God has for them is what God has for them. But what God has for you, he said, eyes have not seen nor ears have not heard. And so it's never going to be deposited into somebody else what God has for you. You need to know how to tap into the God in you. You need to know how to get into the presence of God and hear from God yourself. So your number one strategy this season, honestly should be learning how to discern the voice of God for yourself. You don't need nobody else to tell you what God has for you, because the Holy Spirit who lives in you came to guide you, to lead you, to bring you into all truth. And it does start with reading the word. God meets me in the word. I am so filled with the word. And if you listen to my last episode, I was saying, like, I have spent so much time reading the word. It's within me. Now it's time to believe in it for myself, to believe in me. I am so filled with the word. It doesn't matter what I'm going through. The Holy Spirit directs me through the word. So, like, creating this episode, like I said, pushing through the resistance, I had to use my own strategy. I had to turn to God and say, God, this is hard. This is kind of making me want to be inconsistent like I've been in the past, because there has been so much resistance that I've been inconsistent, because it gets hard. The enemy be fighting me hard. God, I don't know what to do. And so I'm surrendered to the moment. What do you have for me? And I promise you, something came up in me, and God says, I'm doing a new thing in you, Krista. Believe in the power that's within you. And I just felt so clearly, it came to my heart that there is power in your vulnerability. Get on that podcast and tell your story. Get on your podcast and let people know exactly who you are. Your authenticity is where your power lies. And I said, you know what, God, you're right. And I don't know, I just had this strength come over me that I can create this episode, which I'm doing right now. Yeah, big dog. Big dog. We doing all big things. And I'm so excited, because this is what I mean. You need strategy. Life is going to life. Things are going to come up. And if you don't know how to fight, if you don't know how to put on the full armor of God, you're going to be like the wind, tossed and turned, like the waves and the sea. You're going to be tossed and turned. That's why I said, God tells us, do not doubt. For a man who doubts is like the winds and the waves, who is tossed and turned by the conditions of life. You need to be rooted and grounded in something much bigger than you, because this walk is bigger than you. It's not even about you. And when you understand it's not about you, you understand just how pivotal it is for you to learn how to fight. This is a spiritual battle, and you got to go to war for your destiny. You got to know how to go to war to protect what is yours. What God has for you is God has it for you, but you got to actually know how to get it. You got to want it bad enough where you say, by hell and high waters, I'm going to figure out the strategy. I'm going to tap in spiritually in a way that I have never before, because I want it so bad, because it's not even about me. There's a generation connected to my voice. Period. All right. I don't want this to be too long, so I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the second strategy. And this just overcame me today when I was struggling to create this episode. And I was feeling like, dang, is something wrong with me? Is something wrong with my voice? Why can't I do this? God, where is the power that's flowing through me? And I relaxed for a second, and I called somebody who was very special to me. Y'all, this man is so special to me. It's just a friend, but he pours so much life into me. Like, our souls, our spirits are so connected in ways that I can't even begin to perceive in my natural senses. It's only something that is understood spiritually, but he poured so much life into me. And so a part of your strategy needs to be creating a circle and a community who is connected to the new thing that God is doing in this season of your life. That when you are weak, they come in and they know how to fill you back up. They come in, they know how to pour life back into you. They know how to encourage you. They know how to motivate you. They know how to remind you exactly who you are and the power and the authority that exists on the inside of you, because they speak to it. And so in this season, I'm not going to lie, like, who you are listening to, who you're surrounding yourself with is either going to keep you stuck in the things that you were doing back in 2022, 2021, and 2020, or they're going to be connected to the future, where you're going. They're going to speak into, they know how to communicate the language of where you're going and not just where you've been. So you need to have a circle around you who knows how to pour into you, because this walk is not going to be easy. And sometimes your faith is not going to be able to be enough. You're going to need the faith of the people around you. And that's one of the most beautiful things. I think about the man who got healed. He was a lame man. He couldn't walk, and his friends carried him over to Jesus. And Jesus said that by his friend's faith, he was made whole, that he got healing that day, not even by his own faith, by his friend's faith. God perceived the faith of the people around him, and he was made whole. Your community matters, and don't ever get it twisted and think it don't. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Unleash You podcast. I'm so happy that I was able to pour out because, like I said, there has been so much resistance around creating this video, and I just had to push through. And I'm so happy that I was able to push through by doing the 2 strategies that I left with you guys today. I dwell in the shelter of the Most High. I walk with God, I talk with God, and I know how to hear God for myself. I want to leave you with this verse where it says in Psalms 91, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Know how to tap into the secret place. Know how to get alone with God and silence yourself in the presence of a holy God. I believe a lot of times the reasons why we don't want to sit with God and we don't want to just cultivate our own intimate relationship with God because it's like a mirror. When you tap in with God, God is going to place a mirror in front of you. You're going to be able to see yourself more clearly in the areas that you didn't want to address, because we know how a lot of people don't like to face themselves. If we can be real, not too many of us like the hard truth about who we are, our own toxic behaviors, our own self-destructive behaviors, even the good qualities. Like, we run from sitting with ourselves because it's uncomfortable. There's a lot of things that we need to work through. There's a lot of things that we need to face, and we need to feel our way through it in order to receive healing. And so in this hour, don't run from it. Don't run from you. Sit with yourself. Get to know who you are in this hour. Get comfortable with the man or the woman in the mirror, and then begin to create the plan on how you want to see the change happen in your life. But first, you need to accept exactly who you are, but you can't accept what you don't acknowledge. Okay, I will see you guys on the next episode of the Unleash You podcast. Make sure you go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe. I love you guys with all of my heart and all of Christ, and I will see you guys next week.